So today I have a very special guest, Timi.
Yay! Friendship!
Timi's here because we're going to be talking about sustainability, minimalism, and mental health. A couple weeks, months ago, we talked about doing something together, and I felt like this would be really, really good because I believe that this plays a role in our mental health in some type of way.
For sure.
And so, yeah, we're gonna kind of go and see how things go. Yeah.
Great. Cool.
So I have a couple of questions for Timi, but I like to have people share their stories. But before we delve into this stuff, everyone's heard minimalism, sustainability, but I personally, I have an idea what these things mean, but I don't know what they really are. Like, what is the definition of it? Like, if you were to meet a lay person, how would you explain minimalism and sustainability to them?
Yeah, I'd say minimalism is more like minimizing your focus on objects and things and shifting the focus to people and experiences. And I think in the past I've seen people use minimalism as a very black and white, cut and dry thing that can be very, I don't know, I feel very strict and rigid, but I found minimalism to be just more intentionality with, like I said, people and experiences.
What lessons have you learned about yourself since adopting minimalism and living a sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah. I learned that this is my journey and it's my individual journey, and my friends and family are not obligated to come along with me. So one of the biggest mistakes I made in the beginning was judging people for not being minimalist. And it wasn't like an intentional kind of thing, you're a bad person, but I would be the type like, wow, a plastic water bottle? Is that what you want to do? Don't you want? Like, very snide remarks here and there. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, the environment, I'm a crusader for the environment. But it was so exhausting because I would see their faces and be like, okay, so. And I realized after a while, the easiest way to not even convince people, because to each their own, right? I don't even think that minimalism is for everybody. I don't necessarily believe that. But I think it can provide clarity for people if they're in a stage where they need it. But the biggest thing was just like live your life, and people will see bits and pieces that they like and want to adopt. So Thanksgiving was really fun because I said, hey, maybe no styrofoam plates this year. And they're like, okay. So they tried it. Everyone was making jokes the whole time. Like, I wish I could use a plastic cup, but Timmy won't let me. I'm like, no, I won't. But you'll be fine. And everyone was great. They had a good time. I had to wash all the dishes, of course, because I suggested it. But it was more fun and more laid back rather than being like, so here's the rules. We're not going to do this and that, But I didn't really make the lifestyle shift until maybe like grad school. Because grad school, I lived by myself. I got to pick what my environment would look like. So I was very intentional, like, okay, if I can reduce waste here, let me set up this system. And a lot of it was systems. I have to set up something so that I don't continually create waste. And I wanted a peaceful, uncluttered space. We had this conversation earlier about how your space is a reflection of your mental state.
Yes.
And it was the first time I lived by myself, and I said, oh, I don't actually have to have all this stuff. I can start from scratch. And I think starting from scratch was the greatest gift, minimalism-wise, because I got to just, first of all, I was poor, so I didn't have the resources. So I said, okay, I can have one bowl, great. Let me get my one bowl, let me get my one cup, and it's pretty, it's great. And so it was like necessity that gave birth to it. Yeah.
Interesting that you mentioned this, because I actually have two friends. I know one of them, this dude, he's like, I'm a minimalist, blah, blah, blah. I went to his house. He had one bowl, one cup, one spoon. I'm like, so what do you do when you have guests? He's like, they take the spoon, I take the fork.
No way.
I was like, okay, this is too much.
Right.
And then I was talking to someone else, and I was like, when I was thinking about how I was going to come talk to you today, I talked with her this morning, and I was like, yeah, I was thinking about it, because I told her I was coming here, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, you're a minimalist. And she's like, it's because I ain't got no money.
I'm telling you, I feel like there are two camps. Like, I like the aesthetics. I ain't got no money.
Yeah, she's like, she's like, when I moved from Houston to Dallas, I was like, I didn't bring a lot of things with me because I wanted to start from scratch, and then also a lot of things I like are expensive, and so I just buy what I can. Like, I went in her closet and it was like huge, but there's like, it's not full, if that makes sense, and it just looks nice, and it just looks clutter free and breathtaking, and you just want to be there because it just feels, great, right? I was mentioning to Timmy, I want to be a minimalist. Like, as you can see, I love, floating.
Yeah.
But I just can't help without saying I am a Nigerian woman who was raised with, values that seem to be like, you just have to have extra. Like, for example, my mom was like, why don't you, you go to the grocery store to buy one toothpaste, but it's like, why buy one when you can buy a double pack? Why?
I'm telling you, when I first moved out of my parents' house and I bought milk for the first time, I bought a gallon of milk. I said, it's just me.
I
don't get it. And it took me so long. The milk spoiled. I said, okay, now this is an economic problem for me. I'm spoiling milk. No. So then little by little, but you're right. I think we were born and raised in households that were like, you will never lack. You got to make sure you're not caught without, like, it's a real thing.
That's a real thing. That's a good point. And it's funny because the same thing happened with the milk thing with me. So I started buying like quarts. Even then, I'm like, I don't drink milk every day.
Right.
Maybe I drink milk once in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just can't do this. Can I just buy like the little cartons that we had in
high school and
stuff? Like maybe I could do that, but they don't sell that.
It's tough.
But yeah, so okay, nice.
Wait, what did you say just now earlier? Before you're talking about your friend, and they have the one spoon and So I did that because of necessity, right? But then I realized the thing that I value is community. I love hosting. So this is related to my parents too. My parents do this thing. I think everyone's family has like a china closet of really good dishes. And they'll have all these really good dishes, and people come over and they use styrofoam plates. Like, but you have really nice dishes, so you could use them. So I said, okay, I want to host. So I want to invest in a set of hosting dishes. Like, I know that I'm going to use my one bowl or whatever, but I want to have people over, and I want them to be comfortable, and I want them to know that I want to welcome them. I want them to use my stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a set. And one of those fancy sets that you get at Ross, and it's like, ooh, 4 plates, 4 bowls, that thing. So I had it, and I put it there, and because I knew, even in all that happens with minimalism, community and personal interactions was something I didn't want to lose. I wasn't really willing to risk it just for the sake of minimalism. So I think like early on, I suffered too because people would come over and be like, so you ain't got, and I was plant-based too, so I had no meats in my fridge, and I had no cups. They're like, I don't like coming here anymore. It's very, very lack feeling. There's nothing here. So I was like, I can't be living like that. It wasn't good. So
yeah, but that's nice. Like that you recognize, like even in this lifestyle, I still want to have. Which, when you think about it, minimalism's experience, like still preserving the experiences and people.
Yeah,
is a huge thing. So yeah. I agree. So, how has this changed your life?
The thing that has changed my life the most is that I recognize my triggers in a different way. So, so I was living in Syracuse, and there would be times where I lived by myself and I would be lonely, or I wouldn't have seen people and had meaningful interactions in a few days just because, it was the weekend, I didn't go out or whatever. And then I'd be like, oh man, I need to go see people. And so I would like unconsciously after church go grocery shopping. My fridge was full, but I would go grocery shopping just so I could people watch and see people. And while I was there, I would buy stuff because I was like, oh, I want to interact and be amongst people. And then my bank account started looking like, okay, girl, what are you doing? You've been at Aldi every weekend and you're buying like snacks. You're not buying groceries, So then I really thought like, okay, what's triggering me going to the store? What's triggering me feeling like, oh, I need to go buy something? And I was saying like, there's a need that I'm trying to fill. And I think every need is a valid need, but we have this tendency to go find something to fill it. And I'm so glad that I'm like a cheapo, which is what motivates most of my personal change. It's like, oh, you spending money, girl, get it together. If it was just like, oh, it's your mental health, I might have overlooked it.
Yeah.
But because it was showing up financially, I was like, okay, let me really dig deep and see what's going on. And I didn't have a therapist at the time, so I was self-medicating by myself, doing these kinds of things. Yeah, so then I started realizing, okay, I know I'm someone who deeply needs those kind of connections to people, and I'm missing it, which is why I'm trying to fill that void. Okay, I need to minimize in that area and fill myself up in other places. So I'm like, okay, let me have a game night. Okay, cool. I'm still spending money, but now I'm feeding my friends, or I'm providing a social activity. But I really underestimated my need for social connection, and trying to be self-sufficient, I was trying to fill it in many other ways. And at some point it was just like, no, this isn't the way to do it. I'm sure there's a healthier way. And it was good because I was able to really be transparent and be like, I am lonely, I need to see people today. And people, oh, okay, cool, let's get together. It was as simple as reaching out. But before, I was just like, it feels weird to say like, oh, I haven't seen anyone today and I feel lonely.
And that is really, like, I don't know, I think that's amazing that you were able to kind of come to that realization that, what am I doing this for? Because I think a lot of people are just doing things and not sitting back and thinking about the reason and the intent or whatever for whatever it is they're doing. And sitting here, I'm like, wow, just from, trying to be minimalist, you figured this out. Like, what is triggering me to do certain things, which some people would not even have figured out through that. And it kind of, I guess, ties into what my next thought was, is like minimalism and your mental health.
I think the weird thing is, it's like this analogy. If you have a full house and you're making noise in the house, the noise is kind of like, it's muffled a little bit, but if you take out all the stuff in the house, it echoes, right? So if you live by yourself and your house is like empty-ish, you are alone with your thoughts. You're alone with all your stuff. And I didn't realize this till I lived by myself, for real. But minimalism, I would just be there by myself because I stripped away all the distracting stuff. I still had stuff that I love, but I surrounded myself by stuff that I really, really enjoyed. And it was weird. I think maybe because I'm 30 now, and now I've had so much introspection. It's probably really creepy how much time I spent with myself. And I journaled. I'm like, so what is this? Da, 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 da. And now, I had the help of a therapist too to work through some of that stuff. But I think when you strip out the rest of the stuff, you can't hide behind money or clothes or whatever that you've been using. And I hid a lot behind my career. I was an associate director by the age of like 28. So I had this really impressive title at work and people respected me and all this stuff. But I had this deep like imposter syndrome, and I felt like I had to dress myself up all the time. I had a very visible job. So I remember one time I was at the farmer's market and I was like, okay, thank God, I'm just here chilling. And someone said, hey, don't you sing on the worship team? I was like, there's no place I can go that people don't, and it's, maybe I wouldn't handle celebrity status very well, but it was just one of those things. Like, I never had a time where I could be undressed and just be myself, my like naked, awkward, self. And so I think with minimalism, especially now, like moving away from that job, I'm just Timi. And I'm not Timi the associate director. I'm not Timi the whatever. I'm just the person. And I can't hide behind my degrees or my accolades. It's very humbling. I think it was necessary because sometimes that power makes you full of yourself and you kind of forget that you're human, you bleed like everybody else. And I think like success was a superpower, like a cape that I wore very proudly, but then I forgot to like address the inner stuff.
This is about the time in the podcast where it got deep and really into the mental health aspect. Tobi does this really well on her podcast. She's able to combine all kinds of different topics. In my case, mental health, minimalism, and sustainability is rarely something that you see combined in one conversation, but she does that so beautifully on her podcast. So I think you would enjoy hearing the rest of the conversation via podcast. If you'd like to listen to the whole conversation, make sure you check out the Mental Status Quo podcast. You can also hear other mental health stories from other really interesting guests. I personally love this podcast, and I think you will too. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below.